Hello and Happy New Year, Seawolves! Welcome to 2021 and our first Seawolf show again. It's Saturday morning. I'm very happy to be in this new year, and 2021 so far so good. So I think it's time for our very first coffee toast of the year. I think we're gonna have a real fun show today, so lots to look forward to. But of course, to start, the first and most important thing, do you have something absolutely delicious in your cup? I have some fresh 7-minute brewed coffee. I hope that you have something delicious also. Are you ready? Are we ready? Are we ready to toast to an extremely happy, an extremely good, an extremely not socially distanced but social 2021? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Nice. I think that is a good. If that taste is something to be, saying anything about 2021, then I think it's going to be a pretty awesome year. I think it's going to be pretty good. I hope that you all had a great night and a great party. By the way, I had a really great time. Went to some friends at the 31st of December, and basically woke up this morning and found out it's now the 2nd of January. That's all I'll say. So let's start with the first item I want to talk about today is the America's Cup, because we'll get to the Jules Verne and of course to the Vendee Glove. But I figured, I was kind of thinking about the America's Cup this morning, and following the coverage lately. You all know that I haven't spoken so much about it lately, mainly because for my mind there just wasn't a lot going on. There are some problems over at Team Ineos, of course, but as far as the race, nothing really so spectacular or bad or good in any particular way that I felt like I have to put it on the show. So that kind of explains that. And I was thinking about that a little bit more, and I want to ask you all a question. I want to propose something to you, and I'm kind of curious how you feel. And so, because I think there's something happening with the AC75s that has happened before in history in several different areas, but maybe there's a giant opportunity there. And I just want to see, you are all sailors, you all love sailing racing, especially of course the Vendee Glove, so more adventure racing maybe. So I wonder what you think of this idea. So when humanity, let's say, first came up with the idea of live television. So we'd had television for a little while. We had, flicker shows, cinemas, picture shows. But live television was a new thing where we were streaming, a televised program live, right? That happened for the first time at some point. And when that first happened, when that invention was made, it wasn't immediately obvious how we should use that, how to kind of optimally use it as an entertainment medium. And so one of the things that they did, they took a medium that had been performing live for a while then very successfully, which was radio, and they tried to kind of transpose things from the radio world into the live television. And one of the things that they did was they took radio stories, or we call them listening shows in Holland, luistershows. And one of the famous examples of that, of course, the War of the Worlds, which was later turned into a movie, which is basically actors on live radio pretending that something is happening, or telling a story and kind of making it more interesting with sound. So you have somebody who's reading a story, the man walks through the backyard, and somebody goes in a sandbox like he opens the door, and you hear the door opening. It's a listening story, right? It's a story that is kind of illustrated with sounds. Now, when they first tried to do interesting things on live television, they figured, let's do this. And so what they did is they put the actors that were, you know, the guy who was reading the story, the people who were doing the sandbox and all the different sounds, and they just aimed the camera at them. So they're literally, you can find them online if you want, this type of shows where you just see somebody reading a story and somebody making these sounds. But the idea that you could actually have people play out the stories like actors on a stage, that actually wasn't immediately obvious. That's something that came up a little bit later when people had the idea like, hey, instead of just reading the story and making the sounds, it's a camera, people can see it. Why don't we do the same thing that we do on stage in the theater and see if that works? Like, to us, this is of course completely obvious, but that wasn't obvious to us when we first invented this. Same thing with mobile phones. I remember that when those first came out, we had here in Amsterdam a journalist who went on some of the ferries and asked people, you know, would you want a mobile phone? And at this point nobody had one, right? And literally everybody was like, no, of course not. Why would you want a mobile phone? Why do you want everybody to like be able to call you all day long? You'd go completely nuts. Are you crazy? Like, this is the standard reaction that people gave, you know, if they'd only known, right? So sometimes when we invent something new, the way to use it, the way to really get the maximum, like most amazing use out of it, isn't immediately obvious, right? And I think that with the AC75s, this is happening. So we've taken this new invention, this stably foiling, just incredibly fast boat that's able to sail incredibly high upwind and incredibly fast upwind at very low wind speeds, can reach boat speeds of up to 30 knots or sometimes even more. And we are using them to do more or less standard upwind downwind sailing just on a very big track. So because the speeds are so high, we just made the sailing you know, area 5 times as large, let's say, as they usually would be, in order to kind of, you know, make it an enjoyable race. Otherwise they'd be on the other side so fast that it would get kind of boring, right? But these boats are so versatile that I don't know, it just seems like we're really not using the full potential. It's like we're doing that thing that we did with phones and with television, where we're like trying to take something that was kind of fun before with the means that we had before, and we're trying to do something with it that just isn't really the full potential, right? And several of you also commented in the comments earlier when I was commenting on the America's Cup, that you were saying, yeah, it's nice and the boats are amazing, but I just can't really seem to be so excited about the races. And you know, I really love the technology side. I think the boats are amazing, the speed is amazing, the sound is amazing. I love the onboard you know, visuals to see just how fast these monsters are accelerating. But the track itself and the upwind downwind thing, even though it's cool and I, you know, respect the people that are organizing and everything, it's all great, I just think that we could do something so much more interesting with this. And so I'm curious what you guys think. So I made a little bit of a concept, right? And so I made it in the form of an S, you know, for seawolves, and but also because I kind of, yeah, I really kind of put some thought into it, like what would be a really interesting race with an AC75, right? And so say the wind is coming from here and you're making, now obviously this is still going to be a very giant track because the speeds are so high, but basically you're starting with a you know, slight downwind track, yes? Then immediately a jibe, but also kind of to windward, right? So still going very fast. Another jibe, still going very fast with very short time. So it's kind of a test of skill, right? Because you're going very fast, you're going downwind. Then you have to make a jibe, still to downwind. And then very quickly have to make a jibe again. So it's kind of a maneuver test in a way. Then we have another, you know, a little bit longer way of going downwind really fast. And then we have more or less a 180-degree turn where we're switching from this fast upwind to downwind to an upwind, which is, you know, it's not the maximum angle at which an AC can go upwind, but it's close enough, right? So it's a good upwind battle line, let's say. Then we do another 180 and we have a longer, so very, very fast stretch of downwind. Then we make a turn and we go to, you know, when you look at Formula 1, for example, the coolest tracks, I think, always have one area where you just have a really long, straight, fast line so that the cars can really accelerate to the fastest possible speed and hold that for a while, right? And really make some miles. So we have a very, very long, slightly downwind piece of track to really get to the highest speeds possible and sustain them for a while. That's also kind of fun. Then from that we have the you know, switch to more almost 180 degrees again into an upwind. So, you know, again a challenging maneuver, let's say, to make when you really come out of that full speed. Then we're going upwind, then we're switching from upwind to slightly downwind. So again, a little bit of a different transition that we haven't really done anywhere else in the track. We make another 180 from downwind to you know, pretty much as high upwind as they maybe can go. Then we go really maximum upwind for a little bit, but a very short area, and then almost to a beam reach. And then again maximum upwind to a little bit higher than a beam reach. Then we make another tack and we go upwind until we get to the beginning of the track again. So, you know, a nice collection of interesting maneuvers with different you know, wind angles, and just overall a nice challenge, including things like a really long piece for high top speeds, and just several cool technical sports challenges for both the boats and the teams. And of course, this is just kind of a first idea, first sketch, but I was just kind of curious because if they would do this with the AC75s, not necessarily for the America's Cup, I'm just saying in general, it's a little bit like SailGP, but SailGP is also more or less an upwind downwind race, while this would be something really completely different. It really would be a track. And so the angle at which you take the maneuvers and how you come out of the maneuvers would be quite challenging, because if you miss one of the buoys, you have to, of course, tack back, because basically the rule is that you have to pass the buoys at a certain side. For the rest, you can do what you want or whatever you need. So say that you don't make it upwind enough, then you'll just have to make a tack to get around it. Basically, that's how I see it working. And you can do this as a duel, but you could also do this with, you know, 4 ACs at the same time. So just kind of curious what you guys think of this idea. Like, would you be interested to see a sail race like that? So a totally new concept where we really take a track, you know, a little bit like the Vendee Glove in essence, when you have, you know, a track that you go around. Now you could obviously do 5 or 6 laps around this, that's fine. It's not so large that it's a real adventure race, but I think it would make it a lot interesting. And most of all, I think that these ACs, and I think actually the catamarans from last edition, would also be able to sail this. So it might be a cool idea for SailGP, for a new SailGP concept also. But I think this would be very interesting to watch, and I think the boats can do it. I think these boats can go beyond the standard upwind downwind thing, and so it's like a new way of sail racing that isn't adventure racing or upwind downwind, but it's a little bit more in between, let's say. So I'm really curious what you guys think. Please let me know in the comments, and yeah, if you think it's a great idea, you know, forward it to anybody you know in the America's Cup or in SailGP or whatever, and say, watch this. And who knows, maybe you know, we can convince some of the teams to do a test with a track like that, and see how it works. Who knows? I think it would be very interesting. So that's what I wanted to start with. Now let's move to the Jules Verne. No updates there. So right now still 96 hours of probably no weather window. So we can be pretty short on that. And that brings us to the Vendee Glove, where we're going to go into a very, very interesting situation this weekend, because quite honestly, I couldn't really find like historical weather data on this particular thing throughout all the races, or it's going to take me more time than I have, you know, to prepare for a show like this to figure that out. But the storm that is going to be raging at Cape Horn just at the moment when both Yannick and Charlie are going to be moving through there is going to be really of, you know, I wouldn't say biblical, but it's going to be of epic proportions. I mean, winds up to 55 knots, very high wave states. We do have wind with current for the most part, so that's a good thing, I guess, in that sense, but still it's very strong weather. It's going to be really quite risky going through there in any case. I think that in any normal circumstances, where if you were, you know, a cruising boat or many other races, let's say, would in this particular situation with this particular weather forecast, we'll get into it in a second, they would wonder the wisdom of continuing through there, pausing the race or whatever. Now obviously that's not possible in the Vendee Glove. You deal with it, and the boats of course can deal with this particular weather, of course. But it presents a real interesting risk-reward situation where I could almost envision both sailors saying, let's hang back a little bit and wait till the worst of it moves through and then move through it, because this is Cape Horn for a reason, right? And
voilà mon Paulus, t'auras des images de mer. Et voilà, j'espère que ça va passer ce truc là parce que putain. Voilà, la mer elle est marbrée. Et donc ça fume. Waouh. Oh, ils m'ont fait faire. Ça c'est voilà.
And we all know that the weather there can be very bad and very intense, and it often is very intense, so it's hard to get through there without strong weather. But there's strong weather, and there is what's going to happen this weekend. And so it's going to be quite an interesting few days, especially for the leaders, as they're going to be right there, right when the biggest weather is going to hit. And well, let's jump in to the visuals here and look exactly at the situation. As you can see, you know, this particular area, so this is where Yannick is right now, just right outside here, obviously doing a really great speed, 18.1 knots, making a lot of distance to Charlie, who maybe chose to hang back a little bit, who it seems like he could have taken Yannick's track, but he just seems like he's been maybe pacing himself a little bit down and is just saying, look, Yannick is willing to take this risk. Charlie is willing to take some risk, but not this particular risk. Because as you can see, we have here in the prediction 42 knots, but when it says 42 here, for my mind, you always have to add at least 10 knots for gusts in this type of situation within windy. That's my overall experience. You know, if you watch my movie like Beating into 45 knots, for example, we had also a prediction of 25 and it turned out to be, you know, basically 37 or so for the most part, with us beating into it at 7 or 8 knots, giving us an apparent wind speed of 45. And so obviously they are on a relatively good angle, so they have the wind with them, and it's also with the going with the current more or less, so that helps a little bit. But still, this is going to be gusts 55 to 60 knots. Basically what they also experienced at the heart of Theta, which Alex Thompson of course went through, which we still don't know yet exactly if that's responsible for the onset of all the different breakages that he experienced after. But it is a good bet, right? It is a pretty good bet to say that had Alex not braved the heart of Theta and gone through 55 knots consistently for, you know, 2 or 3 hours, that might have prevented whatever initial breakages that then, you know, with the stresses of the continued journey, destroyed his boat essentially, and costing him, you know, 2-3 days to laminate it all. And then would it have taken all the beating of the Southern Ocean? We'll never know. But it seems like we're getting a similar situation here now, with Yannick saying, hey, I'm in first place, I'm going to go through it. So he's been full speeding it, he's not been holding back at all. So really doing something quite different from Charlie. And if we go ahead in the prediction, we do see here that yeah, they are going to get basically the full force of that storm. So here you can also see it's just following them around. And that's going to keep being there until they kind of pass there by tomorrow. So it's not a super long period of them being in the worst of it, but basically exactly from now, from the moment that I'm shooting this until they are around the Cape, both of them, Charlie a little less so he held a little bit back, I think, but both of them are going to be for 24 hours in 55 knots or so. And yeah, so that's going to be very interesting to see now that they both take this risk of actually going through it, how that will translate. And so it's the ultimate risk reward, I guess. They're going to be super fast going through this, going past the Cape, and we can see that the distance that they've now gained on the rest of the fleet, more or less 350, 400 miles or so. And in Yannick's case, Yannick is about 160 miles ahead of Charlie still, so for him it's about 500, almost 600 miles now that he's ahead of the rest of the fleet. So giant gain, and this is, like I said 2 days ago, like this might be the moment when they have enough lead to just take the win of the race there. If they get through this, that very well may come true. That a few days back when I said that that was the moment when the race really ultimately was won for the number 1 and number 2 spot. But again, the next 24 hours are going to be crucial in that also. If they get through this in one piece, they're going to have such a huge lead that it's going to be, well, nigh impossible to catch up with them. And we kind of know from that moment on that you know, they are just number 1, number 2, and unless something really strange happens in the doldrums, which could still happen, they're going to get through there with enough lead to essentially win the race. On the other hand, if they damage something, or if one of them, or God forbid both of them, you know, get some real structural problem like what happened to Alex when he went through this type of weather, and same boat builder, similar design, right? So I guess we'll see what happens, but it's a big risk that both of them are taking, and we'll have to see how it works on. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to say about that. Now then, if we look behind the two leaders, we see that Thomas Rouillant and Damien Seguin also doing very nicely, also kind of together, running away a little bit more from this you know, big fleet of hunters kind of behind them. So they have about 120 mile lead or so over them. So the field breaking up a little bit in the front there, but we see that all the followers on, all getting really close. They all have really great wind. We see Armel Trippon getting a lot closer again to Clarice Kramer now, sailing a lot more to the south. And boat speed again consistently about a knot and a half higher than the rest. So that's also quite interesting to see how these two fleets are gonna get through there. But if we look at the prediction and how the wind is going to progress, we see basically that they're all gonna have really good wind here. Basically, you know, all of them are gonna have no problem at all to get through Cape Horn, and we see that if the prediction holds right now, that this next storm is going to be, which is considerably milder than the one that's going on right now, by the way, is going to kind of be you know, helping many of them through. It won't hit when they're there, so they'll already be past the point where you see them illustrated now, because that's just the end of the 2-day prediction of these tracks. But it will give them a nice push as they move out of Cape Horn, as most of them will be, you know, somewhere around here when that actually hits. So they'll have a nice push out of the system as they go through there. But it basically means that yeah, the entire fleet all the way up to Clarice Kramer are going to have just a more or less perfect ride through perfect and fast ride through Cape Horn. So that's very nice to see. Then we have a little drama, a little bit more behind there. Let's set the prediction back to where we are right now, because this morning I had a message from Pip that she has broken her or damaged her wind meter, the input rod on top of the mast, and because of that has lost her ability to sail to wind. So let's take a look at that.
Hit the skids. I was having a sleep about an hour ago, and my pilot jibed the boat when I went on deck and sorted it all out. Luckily no damage. I realised that the wind data was just completely wrong. So I put the pilot on compass mode and went and had a look at the wind wand, which I can see from deck level, and not sure what's happened to it at all. Can't work it out. Looks like there's a cup missing from it, but the cups aren't rotating, so I've got no wind speed, and the wind vane is also stuck in one position as well. So I've just got absolutely no idea what's wrong with it. Unfortunately, I lost my spare wind wand in the very first front when we came out of Les Abdelons, so I now have no wind data. I've got a spare wand, which is one I can fit at deck level on the back of the boat. The problem with that though is it's only compatible with my spare pilot, and in terms of reliability, I'm not sure I want to switch to my spare pilot now, especially with the big breeze that's coming up. If the first pilot's working okay. I've got 24 hours basically to sort out a strategy of what's most important to me, what's the greatest risk, whether or not in some way I can at least see some wind data. That will be useful, and carry on steering with the main pilot, or whether I'm gonna have to do at least the next 2 weeks until I'm out of the Southern Ocean with no wind data. To say I'm gutted is not even close to how I feel. But you know, that is part of this race, and I know I can get safely around the rest of the course with what I have. I know I can, but that's not really what I want. So just gonna have to step up and find a solution, I guess.
Yeah, so this is quite surprising to me that Pip had only essentially 3 spares with her, as she just told in the video, because what I heard from several people, but also in the interview with Peter Hirema, for example, is that many of the French sailors actually take 10 or sometimes even more spares with them. His direct competitor in the Vendee, he told me, had 15 spare, you know, weather anemometers, I guess they're called, with him, because these things are just so fragile. They're so prone to break or get stuck or just develop problems that it's kind of a given, and that many of the Vendee Globe races historically would end with an anemometer, you know, on a short stick at the back of their boat, because they'd already gone up the mast 2 or 3 times, and at some point they just say, I'm just going to put it on the back of the boat and not bother with going up the mast again. It's a little less accurate, obviously, but it's just a big problem. And it's kind of interesting to see that these are just these anemometers, at least these parts there, are more or less the same plastic things that we as normal sailors have on our boat. So it's interesting, actually, as I was thinking about this, that we have all this carbon and, you know, high grade space materials on the boats, but it seems that you know, your whole system is as strong as the weakest link. And I would say, with the amount of people that have had problems with the anemometer in this particular race again, and in previous races also, and the sense that many of them are taking, you know, 10 or, you know, 15 spare ones with them because they're so prone to breaking, I would say that there might be a market in the race world for an indestructible anemometer, which is maybe made out of, you know, some strong carbon or aluminium or something like that. So perhaps if there's a clever entrepreneur out there who, you know, wants to develop something specially for this type of races that isn't going to be getting destroyed so often, might be a good idea for an ambitious entrepreneur there. You're not going to sell many units, but I think the users are definitely going to enjoy it, right, if the price is right. So that's what's going on with Pip right now, and so that means that she'll be sailing 2 compass courses right now, which of course is still doable, right? The only problem there is that generally, so when you're solo sailing and you balance your boat, like even if you don't use your autopilot at all, which is what I do, because right now my boat doesn't have an autopilot, but what I do is I actually just balance my boat, so the sails, which means that you've set your boat to like a certain wind angle, right? Your boat is optimized at that point to sail at a certain wind angle. But that also means that because your boat is always finding the equilibrium, it's kind of finding the balance within the wind, that if you balance your boat really good, if the wind changes, your boat will just change with the wind. And so that's often how I kind of solo sail. I'm not even using any, you know, auto steering or whatever. We're going into refit later this week, and then we're going to actually going to install a new autopilot, because I took my old one out at the beginning of last season, kind of looking, you know, for a new one. So a new one is coming in now. But you can sail just with balanced sails, and the nice thing about it is that it will automatically sail to wind as long as the wind doesn't change, you know, too radically, and it will constantly find the optimal speed. And so why is it so much better to sail to wind, to have your autopilot set to the wind speed instead of a compass course, is that if you set it to a compass course, the autopilot is not going to optimize for the ever-changing wind, right? The wind angle is never the same. And so to sail to wind really optimizes all the time for maximum speed, 1 mile, a little bit this, and it's always varying a few degrees. It's never really steady. And when you go on compass course, you're constantly losing all those small optimizations, which is especially sad for Pip, because she actually did really super well, taking Arnold Boiseries, and we have Alan Rora here on La Fabrique. So she was just absolutely on a roll, super fast, overtaking 2 foiling boats again, so super cool. And yeah, really unfortunate that in this particular moment her anemometer gave out, because that might kill exactly that small but consistent advantage of half a knot or 1 knot that you need to really push the boat to the absolute maximum. And she might have lost that now that she only has the ability to sail to a compass course instead of to wind. So that's very sad to see, and that also explains her sadness in the video, you know, the knowing of like, yeah, it's not really going to kill me, she's still going to be able to keep racing pretty fast, but she knows that that little edge that she still had of like maybe 1.5 knots faster because of that constant optimization, that you lost that, and that might just you know, quickly lose her these 2 spots again, or it will lose her a lot of sleep if she has to sort of stay on board and keep an eye and kind of use her nose for the wind and constantly try to optimize based on that as much as possible. But that takes, of course, a lot of extra work. So we'll have to see in the next video how she solves it. But that's kind of what's going on right there. Now, another thing that of course really jumps out at us when we look at this particular picture where Pip is that Cherelle and Jeremy Bijou are now really very close to her. So like I said, he might need the entire Southern Ocean to overtake him, but it seems with this very favorable weather and the fact that Cherelle is basically doing 1 to 1.5 knot you know, more speed on average than all the other boats around. So he's kind of performing a little bit like Armel is in the front fleet. It's kind of the same story right now, at least for Jeremy on board of Cherelle. He's in a little bit of a lighter wind patch now, so you know, if we look at his speed right now, it's actually more or less the same, or slightly lower actually than Pip and her friends. Well, actually more or less the same right now. But as he's going to get into the stronger winds that, you know, they are in right now, also we will definitely see that he's going to continue being really fast, and, you know, just doing averages of 19 to 20, sometimes 21 knots over 4 hours. And yeah, he's going to overtake them pretty fast now. So I think probably 48 hours or so. So probably 2 days, and we're going to see that Shirel is going to move probably to the position that Pip is in right now. So he's going to go to place 15, and then he's obviously going to be alone for a long while again, and you know, maybe catch up with the front group, but then it will be most likely somewhere in the doldrum. So you know, somewhere maybe you know, around the equator, so still a long time to go, but you know, we'll see how it goes. I still think that in the end he's going to make it into the top 10, but we'll have to see what happens. But so that's what's happening there. Then if we look behind Jeremy, we see Stefan Larijon on Time for Oceans doing really well also, and behind there, One Planet, One Ocean, Di da Costa, you know, fell back a lot, of course, was battling with Pip for a long time, but just see how much she's gained on him, you know, kind of since they were battling together, but doing well, nice again. Now he's doing 14 knots over the last 24 hours, so absolutely good. Then we have Mr. Shirishi here, doing nicely, 15.1. Now we see that his track is rather erratic again. Also, I don't know if he maybe also experienced some autopilot problems or what was going on there, or if he just, you know, following the best wind. But interesting to see that his averages, sometimes his 4-hour averages are quite good, but basically his 24-hour average is always around 11, 12, sometimes 13 knots. It's consistently quite slow, even though he has one of the faster boats theoretically in the fleet, fast foiling boats, and he has a smaller mainsail now because he had to fix that when he ripped it in the beginning of the race. But I don't quite get why he's so much slower, like if he was a knot slower or whatever. But you'd expect him also in the weather that he's doing right now with a foiling boat, you know, to be able to do 15 or maybe 16 knots or so. So interesting to see what's going on there, but not really know why. Then we have Manuel Cosin on group set in, very close to the ice line there, very nice speed over the last 4 hours. And then we go kind of all the way to the back, where we have Miranda Maran and Clement there on Company d'Elite. Also both doing really nice speeds in relatively nice weather now. And then all the way in the back we see that the spread there is really literally the size of Australia now, with Merci, Sebastian Destremere just very, very far back. And for those of you, you know, you asked about me several times, like when are we going to get another update on where Sam Davis is right now? That's kind of where I'm using this map. And we see right here that right now Initiative Skur, Sam Davis sailing up very nicely together with Arja Heusela. So I guess they decided to you know, duke it out a little bit over there, even though she's not really in the race. I'm sure that Ari can appreciate, you know, sailing with her at least for a while, as she probably is going to be quite significantly faster. But yeah, doing nicely, and yeah, she is going a little bit faster than Ari. But so that's where she is right now. So she actually passed the Cape Lewin also, and now on her way to New Zealand and just following the race nicely. And so yeah, that's where the Vendee Globe is right now. And so like what I started with, it will be very tense 24 hours now to see if everything remains okay on board with Yannick and with Charlie. And I really hope that both of them get through this particular weather challenge in one piece. As they say, I think it's the rule that if you pass Cape Horn, that you can you know, eat with your elbows on the table, I think. So I think that after this particular storm, they're both more than able to do it, and I'm sure they'll get through it. My main question is, will the boat hold up, you know, 4 or 5 days after that? I mean, with Alex, we saw that he came through Teda more or less okay, and it was only, I think, 3 or 4 days after that he found out that he had had developed some very interesting structural problems, which all together with, you know, other things, of course, ended up taking the race away from him. And for my mind, we're seeing something really similar to the conditions that were there in strength, maybe even more severe. So I really hope that both gents come through this in one piece. Okay, so that brings us to the auction of the the boat. And you may have wondered why I didn't mention it on the 31. It's because I'm in conversation with a gent who offered, by the way, 300 euros for the boat. So you know, a nice amount that will add to Seawolves and to initiatives occur there. But he actually has a really cool idea to do something with this. So I'm talking about with him about that later today and tomorrow to see if we can actually make that happen. There are a few technical things that we need to work out, but if we can do it, it'll be really fun, and maybe it can gain a lot more money for charity actually, so that would be kind of nice. So more updates on how the Christmas New Year auction is actually going to end, hopefully tomorrow or the day after. But I haven't forgotten, we are going to get to the update of that later. So then I want to get to something else really interesting, kind of Vendee Glove related, because one of the Seawolves had a really cool idea to make a dashboard out of the dashboard information that the Sea Explorer is using. And I want to show this to you, so let's dive. So what you're looking at here is a dashboard that Jan-Lucas Augustin made, and the link to this is actually in the description, and I'll also put it in the top comment, which is pinned to this video. And so it's really cool. I also gave this to the group at Sea Explorer actually, so Team Malaysia also has this. And he took many of the data points, but actually put them on the racetrack. And so here on the left side, you can look at different data, like foil rake, basically all of the different data points that Sea Explorer is using. And you can see the entire track that the Sea Explorer has sailed, you know, until now. And you can look at, for example, the rig load. So if I select rig loads J2 here in the bottom, the data you know, will change, and now we can see, so basically we have a legend here on the other side that kind of shows the rig loads, you know, in tons. And now we're actually looking at what the rig loads were on the J2 sail throughout the race. And so we can see that basically you know, kind of a maximum tonnage there, or at least that we can see based on the color here that 0 to 1 to maybe 2 tons is what is represented by the red color. And we can see that, so basically the loads were very often you know, between 1 and 2 ton. Or we can look at what was another really interesting data point that I found. Oh yeah, heeling angle, for example, which I thought was very, very interesting. Oh yeah, here, so other heel angle, for example. So when I change the data to this, it takes a second to change the data, so you have to always wait a little bit for it to update, but as you can see, there it goes. And very interesting to see that the heel angle on Sea Explorer actually not that dramatic. So for the most part, we can see, especially in the Southern Ocean, that it's mostly kind of in this kind of light yellow-orange range, sometimes dipping a little bit below. But most of the time, actually, it seems like, for the most part, staying under actually -10 degrees. So the Sea Explorer in the Southern Ocean sailing on a relatively flat heel, which is kind of interesting to see. Well, anyway, I'm sure that you fellow nerds can really enjoy diving into this for a long time, and you know, providing a lot of insight to yourself as for how the boat exactly performs and what is going on in different moments in the race. So you have the link to this, and yeah, nerds go nerd, I think. So you know, enjoy this, and thanks very much to Jan-Lucas Augustin for creating this. So kind of a fun Seawolf bonus today. And that's more or less it for the show today. So thank you all again very much for watching. Make sure to give the video a thumbs up and put a comment below. Again, let me know what you think about this you know, S-Race design race course idea for the A75. Really curious to see if you would be interested in seeing a race like this. I was actually thinking, because we have several small foil rental places here very close to Amsterdam, and maybe it might be interesting in the summer to take a few small foiling boats and actually try a course like this, because you don't have to use ACs. I think many foiling boats are kind of suited to do a race course like this. So we're talking of course about doing a Seawolf race day / community event at some point, maybe in July somewhere. Might be cool to include a race like that and kind of pioneer it, as Seawolves together. That might be really cool. So if you have any ideas or options there, also let me know in the comments, or of course send an email to contact@seawolvestv.com. And that's it for today. So again, make sure to like the video. For all other information, go to seawolvestv.com. Also special thanks to all of the patrons and backers and people who are running around in the t-shirt. I got a picture today from somebody, and this is really impressive. I mean, I don't know how this person was able to so fast change legally the name of their boat and put this particular sign up, but all I can say is I'm loving it. Absolutely cool to see that you're sailing around. You definitely get a free Seawolf mug for that. So if you're the owner of this particular boat, send an email and I'm definitely going to send you a free Seawolf mug for that once I get them, because as you can see, I still haven't got mine. I'm waiting anxiously for it to come in the mail. So again, for the third time now, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you all tomorrow for another update, and we'll see how both Charlie and Thomas are doing then. Ciao!